Hello there. Welcome into a Thursday edition of the show. Yes, I am back. I am back from Las Vegas. They are donating a wing of a casino in my honor, given the donation that I made. And suffice to say, I'm glad I got out of there alive, barely alive, but alive. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you're listening on the 100% free to download, free to listen, Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. And yes, a veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you. And I'd like to get your thoughts at 719-247-1313. You can call or text in. Yes, we will talk about Deion Sanders. Yes, we'll talk about the post-mortem of the Denver Broncos season. Little Avs, little Nuggets. But we start with what I am referring to as the comment. Here's Sean Payton at his end-of-season press conference.
There's a lot of confidence in this team. If we could get past that game, the next game we had to play, we felt real good about.
And as you know, if the Denver Broncos would have beaten the Buffalo Bills, their next opponent automatically would have been the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I do think that the context in which he made that comment is important, and I want to be fair to the comment before I go at Sean Payton a little bit here. The context of it is that he was talking about what the next step for this team is, which is a natural segue into needlessly and perhaps carelessly insinuating that if the Broncos would have beaten the Buffalo Bills, that they would have also beaten the Kansas City Chiefs and would be playing for an AFC championship. So let's set aside for a moment why he made those comments and just point out how objectively hilarious it is that Sean Payton feels that way. Okay, first of all, you had almost zero chance to beat Buffalo. Okay, so this idea that, well, if we would have won, then we would have really felt, yeah, but you had no chance to beat Buffalo. So that's the first step. You can't even get through. It's very easy. It's easy to say this after the fact when you've been eliminated, but it's very easy to say, well, if we just could have gotten through this team, then we definitely would have beat the next one. It's easy to say that. But wouldn't that have kind of been the point? So just to get to Kansas City, okay, your confidence level, Sean Payton aside, okay, you knew you had to go into Buffalo and win. So Sean Payton essentially is saying, if we would have beaten Buffalo, we would have put together arguably two of the most impressive and biggest upsets in the history of the NFL playoffs. Back to back, we would have stacked them back to back. The hubris of this guy after a season, and yes, where the Denver Broncos far exceeded expectations and a lot of egg was on a lot of faces in doubting that the Denver Broncos would be any good this year. And for that, you can't say anything. Sean Payton deserves the utmost amount of credit. They had one quality win on the entirety of their schedule, and it was week 4 against Tampa Bay. To say that team was a win against Buffalo away from going to the AFC Championship, having not beaten any good teams. The best team they beat got eliminated on their home field in the first round of the playoffs. That's their best win, and it came all the way back in week 4. So it is, one, it's objectively ridiculous to say something like that. Okay, because your path through the AFC playoffs, you are not going to survive. Okay, and you weren't going to beat Buffalo. So you could say what you said with a little bit of armor like, well, you can't prove me wrong. How do you prove a negative? How do you prove that the Denver Broncos would not have gone into Arrowhead and beaten the Kansas City Chiefs to stop their chances at a three-peat? It's difficult. It's difficult for me to prove that the Broncos wouldn't have, except for history. Except for the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs is a completely different animal. Forget the team that the Broncos were a blocked field goal away from potentially beating early in the season. That's not the team they would be facing this weekend. To take a almost win or a win against the Chiefs backups, to take either one of those and extrapolate it out and say we would have gone into Arrowhead and beaten the Kansas City Chiefs is a level of hubris that I will never get to in my life. So, can we just agree that it's a ridiculous statement? If you disagree with me, fine. We can have it out. We can have a discussion about it. 719-247-1313. The Denver Broncos would not have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead this weekend. They would not have. Period, point blank, they wouldn't have. They're not good enough yet. But that yet is what I want to focus on. Getting back to the context of his comment. This is Sean Payton. This is who he is. He writes some checks that you feel like there's no way he can cash. And in the immediate future, he doesn't. But wait. Right? Wait. He thought that this team would be much better than people thought, called people like me idiots, and, well, maybe he didn't call us idiots, but said people like me don't know what they're talking about. And it took a while for the Denver Broncos to be able to cash the check that Sean Payton wrote for this team this season. But they did. To talk about Bo Nix. A reach at 12, if there ever was one. Sean Payton would not stop gushing about him, talked about how good he's going to be, and said, once again, you don't know. I do. May I present to you, in a world without Jaden Daniels, the best season for a rookie quarterback this year. When he said Nathaniel Hackett did the worst coaching job in the history of coaching jobs. What happened just a month or two later? The Denver Broncos got beat by the Jets, and Sean Payton looked like a complete buffoon. But season goes on. Broncos start winning games. especially now you see what they did this year, and you say, you know what? He wasn't wrong. This team is not good enough to beat Kansas City right now. There is no chance they would have gone into Arrowhead this weekend and won a football game. No way. That I am 1,000% certain. However, it's not to say that the Denver Broncos aren't on a path to being able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They are trending absolutely in the right direction. Bo Nix, you can reasonably expect to be better next year and the year after and the year after that. This team will have less of a burden on their cap, courtesy of Russell Wilson. And they will be able to go out and improve the team. They have more of their premium draft picks that George Paton can play with. This team is absolutely going in a direction. If we look at the trajectories of these two franchises, yeah, the Broncos have a ways to go, but they're going up towards where Kansas City is, and Kansas City is at the very top, but they've plateaued a little bit, right? Certainly we don't look at this Chiefs team and say that they're more talented than they've been in years past, but they just keep winning. Right? So they're at the very top. Broncos are trending in that direction. They're not there yet. Sean Payton dangles these carrots in front of his team because part of his job when he arrived in Denver was to change the culture. With all due respect to everyone involved with the Broncos organization before Sean Payton arrived, it was an organization of losers. They weren't winning. They weren't winning anything. Sean Payton needed to come in and instill a confidence, a swagger, a hubris, and a belief that they're not losers, that they're winners. And this is another example of that. The next step for this team is to win the AFC West. On paper, they are not even close. But Sean Payton's going to put it out there, and he's going to strive for it. And if his previous history is any indication, before he is done as the head coach of the Denver Broncos, he will win an AFC West title. Now, here's the problem. By saying what he said, this is now the bar for next season. If you believe that you would have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs this year, you sure as hell better beat them next year. That is what he's going to have to run up against, because I think a lot of people, you and I can agree that, yes, given how young the Broncos are and everything like that, they're certainly trending in a direction where they will win an AFC West title at some point, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. I don't know. I got to see what they do with their draft picks and their free agency and see a very important second year from Bo Nix. But because Sean Payton said what he said yesterday, now it's this year. The Denver Broncos must win the AFC West this year, or for the first time since becoming the head coach of the Denver Broncos, Sean Payton will write a check that his team and he himself cannot cash. Take your thoughts. 719-247-1313. Sean Payton had some more measured comments, a lot of comments yesterday, doing a post-mortem on his team's season. I'll take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, so is Deion Sanders taking the Cowboys job or not? Welcome in Drive Time Sports. You can watch the show on our social media platforms, Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube at Extra Sports 1300. And while you're there, drop a comment. Although this one, I don't love it, but I'll display it and read it. Ami Angel says, go Texans. I disagree. Respectfully. I'll do the Sean Payton thing. Respectfully, I disagree. Not go Texans. But I will give you credit. When we were laying out last week which betting dogs had the best chance to win, you did say the Texans. And you were right. So kudos to you. The biggest story in sport at this moment in time is, will he or won't he Deion Sanders to the Dallas Cowboys? The latest from Ed Werder today. I will read it so as to not misquote Ed. Regarding Deion Sanders, I'm being told that he would almost certainly accept if Jerry Jones offers to make him the next Cowboys head coach, that those around him are encouraging him to pursue it, and that Jones is enamored with the idea. I don't know which party this is a worse idea for. I don't know if it's worse that Jerry Jones wants to hire Deion Sanders or is enamored with the idea of hiring Deion Sanders, or it's a worse idea for Deion Sanders to accept Jerry Jones's job offer if he were to extend it. This is sometimes something like this is good for one party, not good for another. This would be terrible for both parties. Let me start with the Cowboys side of it, because the Deion side of it, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. You could understand that organization, right? The pitfalls of signing up to work for Jerry Jones. But let me start with the Cowboys side of this. Let us not forget that Deion Sanders is atypical for a college football coach, but he is, in fact, a college football coach. And I don't hear enough people mentioning this. Do we have to go back through? Every network has a graphic. Here are all the college coaches. And they went to the NFL, and guess what they did? They failed miserably. Pete Carroll the first time around. Urban Meyer. This does not work. Going from college to the pros does not work. And so for the Dallas Cowboys, a team that, let's set aside Jerry Jones's delusions of grandeur or whatever the heck he thinks his team is or is not. I'm not crawling into that guy's head for a second. The Dallas Cowboys, when healthy, you have to be fair to the situation this year. They did not have Dak Prescott for most of the year. Okay? When they have Dak Prescott and Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb, they are one of the better teams in the NFC. Not the best, one of the better ones. They are a perennial playoff team. They are a perennial contender to win their division. So you are going to take a team that's their only next step for the Cowboys is to go to a Super Bowl. That's it. There's no room in between where they have existed and going to the Super Bowl. There's no next step. That's the step. This team has to go to a Super Bowl. And you are going to take that situation and hand it over to somebody that has something on his resume that in the history of the NFL has almost always proven to be a detriment to the point where inevitably you're going to be looking for a new head coach soon thereafter. This is not a good idea for the Dallas Cowboys. If you are going to fire Mike McCarthy or mutually agree to part ways, as the PR spin said, you better get somebody with better credentials than Mike McCarthy, a more proven commodity than Mike McCarthy. Now, if it were a Ben Johnson or something like that, maybe there would be a little bit of a debate like, yeah, he doesn't have the credentials of a Mike McCarthy, but more progressive thinker, younger, maybe it could work. Okay, but to go to somebody who has not so much as held a coordinator position in the National Football League to hand over a franchise that's only acceptable outcome every year is going to a Super Bowl. Maybe not winning it, but going. You're going to turn that over to Deion Sanders. It is a bad idea for the Cowboys. But it is a worse idea for Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders, if this is about, and one thing I will say is that I am at least somewhat glad that Deion Sanders has backed off seemingly of his I got to coach my sons, because I think that was extremely detrimental, especially to Shiloh, the lesser of his two sons in terms of football playing ability, basically turning him into the football version of Bronny James, that anybody that wants Deion Sanders has to draft him, whether they like it or not. I'm glad he is at least backing off of that with his interest in the Cowboys, because there is a 0% chance that he will coach his sons with the Dallas Cowboys. So I'm at least glad that he's entertaining opportunities that don't directly involve his sons. Let them move on. You go and do your own thing. But even though Dallas has the expectation of going to a Super Bowl every year, I will say this without equivocation. The Colorado Buffaloes are closer to winning a national title than the Dallas Cowboys are to winning a Super Bowl. So if this is about winning a championship, if this is about standing atop your sport, you're in a better place. Not in an infinitely better place. CU has a ways to go, but Colorado is closer to winning a national championship than the Dallas Cowboys are to winning a Super Bowl. So what is this about? What is this about for Deion Sanders? Just being able to say he's done it? To be able to complete his rise from a high school coach to an NFL coach? Is that what this is about? Because I have seen many clips of Deion Sanders not just saying, yeah, I don't think the NFL's for me. I saw a clip where he said he would be arrested because he would get in a physical altercation with one of his players if he had to coach at the NFL level. His words were, I can't coach someone who doesn't love the game as much as I do. In his perception of the NFL is it's a bunch of guys that do this for their 9 to 5. And he is not wrong. A lot of guys have the ability to play football. They look to make as much money as they can. It is maybe not what they love. It's not what they live and breathe, but they have a knack for it, and they can make a whole lot of money doing it over a short amount of time, and they're going to do it. CU just announced that for the first time in the history of that program, the CU program, the football team has a cumulative GPA above 3. That's what Deion Sanders wants to do. Everyone focuses on the bluster and the bravado and everything like that, but he really enjoys molding young minds, setting them up for future success. These are guys, he has a roster full of guys that are trying to desperately work to get to the next level, to take care of their family. Some of them, it's been their lifelong dream to play in the NFL. Like, these are the people he's working with. They're not, quote unquote, spoiled millionaires. Not everybody in the NFL is a spoiled millionaire. Deion Sanders is made to coach college football or high school football. Just a level of football in which there is a chance for him to have a greater influence on young men as football players, but also as men. He is in the right spot. So to leave that and go to not only the NFL, but go to one of the most dysfunctional organizations in that league, to abandon this path that you're going down, that he's doing so well, to leave it to go to the NFL. The only thing I can think is for him to be able to, a notch on his belt, another trophy on the mantle, whatever it is, some kind of personal drive to be able to say, I did this, knowing full well that the minute he gets canned by Jerry Jones, he will be able to go back to college football. That's the only thing I can think of. And it's not a good enough reason. It's not. What happened to the Raiders job? Why is it got to be the Cowboys? Now, Raiders aren't infinitely better, but it does feel worse, doesn't it? Going to the Cowboys does feel worse than going to the Raiders, and the Raiders are at the bottom of a division where the 3 other teams just made the postseason. But I don't care where, unless he's going to take over for Andy Reid, and even then, I don't know if I would say it's a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's a bad idea for Deion Sanders, and it's a bad idea for the Dallas Cowboys. And my belief on this is that Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders are doing what they both do best, to get you and I to talk about them incessantly. That's what this has to be. This flirtation between the two of them. I don't see that it actually happens, but in just the few days since I've been in Las Vegas and now back here, it seems like it's getting more real by the day. So I will still be stunned and shocked if Deion Sanders leaves CU to coach the Dallas Cowboys. And every step of the way, I will say it's a bad idea for both parties, and I will say that this feels to me like a stunt. This feels like 2 people who have an unbelievable gift to make people be fascinated with everything they do, regardless of how much they accomplish. And they looked at each other and they said, why not? Let's break the internet for a week. That's what this seems like. Because I don't understand this potential marriage for either party. And I hope that's all it is. Just doing it for clicks. 719-247-1313. Two separate questions, I suppose. Do you like the idea of Deion Sanders going to the Dallas Cowboys? Two, do you think it will happen? I have the same answer for both, no and no. I'd be curious if you say yes to one of the two. 719-247-1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. I didn't realize that there were so many Houston Texans fans out there. This is amazing. Tom just texted in and said, go Texans, go. I thought this whole time Tom was a Patriots fan. I can't think of another reason why multiple people would contact this radio show hosted by me and express their profound hope that the Houston Texans win on Saturday. I can't think of another reason. So there's two in the camp of go Texans, go. Speaking of the playoffs, I was just reading through Bill Barnwell on ESPN, and I enjoy his work very much. And he was talking about fixes to the playoff format, which I have to say that it is a sad commentary on the NFL when we have to do this, because it could have been all avoided. You know, I read through Bill Barnwell's, all of his ideas. They've all been brought up at one time or another. He puts together very well-crafted arguments for why these things need to happen. To me, it won't fill enough column inches on ESPN.com, but I'm telling you, we didn't even have to be at this point. The institution of the 7th playoff team was a terrible idea from the get-go and has only proved that it's still a bad idea. There is no benefit that you or I care about, because when's the last time you or I cared about the bottom line of some owner of an NFL team that's, meddling and maybe could get a 7th playoff spot? Since when do we care about that? So we know why they made the change, but that change had nothing to do with making the product better, and it only has made it worse. Instead of Buffalo getting a well-deserved bye week to prepare for the Baltimore Ravens, a team that is a very bad matchup for them, but they earned home field advantage over them. Instead of having a week to prepare, or a bye week to prepare, in addition to their preparing this week, they had to mess around with the Denver Broncos, who were not in their class. And then the Denver Broncos showed up to the playoffs and looked like so many other 7 seeds, completely overmatched, undeserving of a playoff spot. I just find it humorous that there are so many people today saying, how do we fix the NFL? Go back to the way it was before the thing that always gets in the way of professional sports decision-making, before greed came into it, and you wanted more playoff games for your television partners, and you wanted these owners who didn't deserve to get playoff revenue or deserve to have full stadiums towards the end of the year. You manufactured a way for them to get those things by instituting a 7th playoff spot. That's the only thing. It's never bothered me as much as it has other people when a division winner, even if they have a worse record than a wild card team, gets to host. I don't have that much of a problem with it. It doesn't happen all the time, and I am okay with it winning your division meaning something. But if you don't agree with me, then that could be another fix to say, hey, you get to host if you have the better record of the matchups. Divisions don't matter. I could see that. I'm not a proponent of it, but I could understand. It's such an easy fix. and it'll make the NFL playoffs so much better. Kansas City and Buffalo get the byes. No Denver, no Green Bay. Philly gets a bye. Detroit gets a bye. We have teams that are more deserving of being in the playoffs, playing in Wild Card Weekend, giving us a better opportunity for better games. It's a simple fix. And it's not even a fix. It's just going back. They already had it. They had this idea. They were instituting it. It was going on. It's the way we grew up with the NFL playoffs. 6 teams, 2 of them get a bye. I've been saying this forever. And now is the time where everyone comes out of the woodwork and is like, something's wrong with this. I can't quite put my finger on it. We don't need 7 teams. And with as much of a grind and a just how difficult it is to get through an NFL season, I'm okay with awarding another team in each conference a bye week. But money. Right? But money. Can't argue with how it's helped the NFL's bottom line. But it's like the college football playoff now. We should get better games. The teams that were undeserving, and not all of them were. I mean, I certainly don't look at Tampa Bay losing to Washington and saying, wow, they really, didn't deserve to be in. But there were a few teams that were exposed for what they were. Denver, Green Bay, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and some of them would have been in anyway. But the point is, the first weekend of the NFL playoffs, and like we're finding out with the first weekend of the college football playoffs, is about weeding out the teams that don't deserve to be there. And now you look at what teams we have left. You may like one team more than the next, but we have all division winners, yes. We have all teams that proved out to be the best in their division. We had all teams that had earned, except for Washington. Point is, you look at the field that is left and you say, this is a more deserving group of teams than what we were dealing with last weekend. 719-247-1313. One story that was going on while I was away was Bo Nix talking about his transverse fractures in his back. I had some thoughts on it I want to share with you here. And it plays into something that Sean Payton said yesterday. First of all, like, good for Bo Nix, man. Like, we can't make this too big of a deal, right? It didn't last throughout the season. Transverse fractures can heal themselves. Bo Nix himself said that the discomfort he was feeling went away during the bye week. The rest that he got. Okay, so let's not act like Bo Nix went into Buffalo and had a broken back and all this kind of stuff. It was 2 games. It was the Raider game and the Browns game. Now, with that being said, that dude is really tough for battling through it. And I didn't think he was good against Cleveland. He was very good in that second half against Vegas. Broncos did enough to win those 2 games. Bo Nix deserves a ton of credit for battling through that. And it's just another thing to further endear himself, not just to the fan, but to his teammates. You don't think his teammates knew what was going on with him? You don't think they understood what Bo Nix was dealing with, and yet he was out there at practice getting ready for that Monday night game, telling them there's no way I'm missing this first Monday night game, just like he told the media the other day? When Bo Nix was given the captaincy, which in the NFL doesn't mean nearly as much as it does in the NHL. But I did compare it to when Gabriel Landeskog got the captaincy of the Colorado Avalanche. Was there enough to go on at that moment in time to say, oh, yeah, he deserves to be the captain? No. Not with Gabriel Landeskog, not with Bo Nix. But I said at the time, because I had seen what happened with Gabriel Landeskog, I said there is a chance, if Bo Nix is given time, to grow into it, to actually become deserving of that. Yes, it was a little bit of a PR stunt. Yes, it was a little bit more about, furthering, the idea that they didn't miss on Bo Nix, that Bo Nix was the right guy, right? Look, he's the captain now. Like, there was a lot of that going on. Just like with the Avalanche, there was a lot of politics, PR stuff that came into it. There was. But Gabriel Landeskog grew into being a captain to the point that it seems foolish all these years later to ever have doubted Gabriel Landeskog's ability to become worthy of wearing the C on his sweater. Someone needs to do this. Best captains in the NHL, I put Gabriel Landeskog right at the top. Even when he's not available, and he hasn't been available for 3 years, you still hear how much he's trying to help lead this Avalanche team. And it's the same thing with Bo Nix. Bo Nix didn't deserve to be a captain, but let's also look at who does deserve to be a captain on a team that had accomplished nothing, with a bunch of guys that were in their first, 2-3 years in the NFL. It wasn't like there was anybody that just stood out and said you had to make him the captain. But it's moments like that. It's things like that. Playing through pain, being there for his team at a very important juncture of the season. That's captain type stuff. And Bo Nix deserves a ton of credit. And then you have Sean Payton yesterday saying that Bo Nix showed up to the facility, has been showing up to the facility, and he had to say, go take a break. Bo Nix is one of those guys with both of these little tidbits, the transfers, fractures, and him showing up to the facility after the Broncos get bounced by Buffalo. How many other Broncos players are showing up to the facility days after they lost to Buffalo? I promise you there are more Denver Broncos players in Mexico right now than there are in Inglewood. Bo Nix is a guy that Sean Payton's going to have to protect from himself. There's some reason to say transverse fractures, right? You don't need to have surgery. Rest. Could they have rested Bo Nix for Monday night? He pushed to. They decided to. I don't have a huge issue with letting him play through it. But if this is kind of the tone setter for Bo Nix's career, he's going to have to be a guy where Sean Payton's going to be like, no. And I've heard numerous coaches talk about this. You'd rather have 53 guys that are like Bo Nix, and you have to rein them in, and you have to tell them to slow down, and you have to tell them to take a break. You'd rather do that than have to push guys to show up to the team facility, to play through pain. Just another couple of anecdotes in the legend of Bo Nix that wrote its first chapter this past season. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, more from Sean Payton. His thoughts on the season, whether he thought it was a successful year in Denver. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports on a Thursday. Ryan Kaufman with you. Back from Las Vegas, wishing for a better result than Air Force women's basketball got last night. Vegas abuzz with the prospect of hiring Ben Johnson as their next head coach. Talk about that coming up in a little bit. Your thoughts very welcome on this day. 719-247-1313. Sean Payton yesterday had his end of season press conference, as did George Payton and Greg Penner. A post-mortem, if you will, on the Denver Broncos season. And yes, the headlines were this comment.
There's a lot of confidence in this team. If we could get past that game, the next game we had to play, we felt real good about.
And I'll get back into that comment a little bit later. But Sean Payton was asked whether this season was a success. That's obviously been a discussion, given what happened with the Denver Broncos in the playoffs and how they were outclassed, outmanned, outgunned in every form and fashion. They did not win a single one of the three phases against the Buffalo Bills. In many ways, they were embarrassed by Buffalo. And would that ultimately put a stain on the season to the point that perhaps it wasn't as successful as it was shaping up to be going into the playoffs? Here's Sean Payton on whether the season was ultimately a success.
You can define success in so many different ways. Look, was it a team I was proud of and we were proud of? Yes. These guys fought. They came together. They, like most teams in our league, hit stretches of adversity, bounced back. So there were a lot of positives to build on. And yet, it still was disappointing to finish the way we did. I didn't think we played up to our potential in the last game.
And I, unlike his other comment I played for you, 100% agree with Sean Payton. There can be a level of disappointment over the fact that the Denver Broncos did not put on a good showing in the first round of the playoffs. I think it all depends on your level of expectation going in. I am not and still am not at all surprised one bit that that game went the way it went. But if you had higher hopes and higher expectations, then certainly it would be even more disappointing what happened on Sunday in Buffalo. But I do not look at that performance and say it's solely the bigger picture here, which is the Denver Broncos that were supposed to win no more than 5 games, won enough to get into the playoffs for the first time in 9 seasons. The Broncos arrival back in the NFL in many ways, right? Like the inner circle of these teams are relevant. The Broncos are back in there after so many years of them not at all being in that group whatsoever. And if they would have faltered down the stretch to the point that they don't make the playoffs, then yes, I would be saying something different. But they got in. They got into the playoffs. So, and that's really what it's all about. Success or failure always depends on your level of expectation. To Sean Payton's first comment there, a lot of different ways to define success. The way to define success in many people's minds is, here's what I think about you. Do you exceed or fall below that? If you exceed it, you're a success. If you fall short of it, you're a failure. The Denver Broncos went from a team that I thought was going to, at best, win 7 games to a team that won 10. And even when my expectations changed as the season went on and the Broncos' playoff probability went to nearly foregone conclusion territory, and I said this team must make the playoffs, that if they falter down the stretch and don't get in, the season will be a failure. I meant it. And they met that expectation. They got in. And I expected them to not be any match for the Buffalo Bills. That their mere existence in the playoffs was only because of this unnecessarily and needlessly expanded playoff field. So every step of the way, the Broncos have either exceeded or met my level of expectation. I add all that up together and I say, yeah, this season was a success. I think the best thing that Sean Payton has done in Denver, from a football perspective, yes, it's identifying that Bo Nix, despite not being quite as talented as some of the quarterbacks at the top of the draft, identifying that, you know what, the things he brings to the table outweigh that. I can work with that, and getting it right, developing him the right way to where you can reasonably expect Bo Nix to take a stride next season. Obviously, that is the most important football thing that Sean Payton did. But the culture that he has instilled in this team is important. It sounds hokey. It sounds, culture. Like that's what the Heat put on their basketball court. Like how cringe is that? Also, side note, how cringe is it to say cringe? Is that okay anymore, or should I be using something else? To talk about culture is so lame. It's so lame. I'm sorry. Like, whether it's a company, a sports team, it is so corny to talk about culture. But that doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And it doesn't mean that changing the culture for the better can't lead to good things for your organization. Sean Payton, at times with his comments that were not met with nodding heads and smiles, the more abrasive comments that he has made that go against NFL coach bro code and all that kind of stuff. It was all for the sake of his ego a little bit. Like, you have to, acknowledge that. But it was to instill the culture of a team that expects success. Broncos didn't achieve ultimate success. They didn't achieve success against any team worthwhile, but they achieved success, a form of success that none of the guys on that roster, save for about Ben Powers and Mike McGlinchey, had ever accomplished. That he changed the mindset of this football team, and he had the perfect sidekick to be able to do it with Bo Nix. Bo Nix playing through broken backs and, working as hard as he did and all this kind of stuff. He had the perfect lieutenant, the perfect sidekick to be able to instill his culture. Because last year, he was not able to quite do it to the level he wanted to. Because, in part, I'll just say the veterans. Some of the veterans on the Denver Broncos. You know which one more specifically I'm talking about. Now the next step is be more talented. This team has the right mentality. They're well coached. They have a lot of players that you like as a foundation moving forward. Now the thing is with the Denver Broncos, they're just not good enough. They're just not talented enough. That's the next part of this. But you can't bring more talent into a building that they're going to be corrupted by a losing culture. It is a good time to join up with the Denver Broncos right now. Good culture, wealthy organization. You'll be taken care of. You're going to be well coached. You got a young quarterback worth rallying around. This is a good time to become a Denver Bronco. In years past, it was not. The culture needed to come first. Now the talent. Now the Broncos just need to get better. And we'll see if they can do that throughout this offseason. 719-24-7. 13-13. Was this season a success for the Denver Broncos? Talked about it a little bit on Monday, and then I was gone for 2 days. So if you didn't get a chance to weigh in Monday after the Buffalo game, I want to give you the opportunity. I say absolutely it was a success. Absolutely. But because of his other comment, now success can only be measured by winning an AFC West. Already laid that groundwork. We'll get into that in a little bit. I do want to talk about, I mentioned at the top that the city I just came from is abuzz with the fact that they think they're going to end up landing Ben Johnson. Raiders insiders are saying that's where all signs are pointing to. There hasn't been a lot of pushback on a national level from Schefter and others to say, no, there's no way Ben Johnson will take that job. I think Ben Johnson would be a better hire than, say, Deion Sanders, who is rumored with the Raiders for a little bit. But if it does end up happening, I would be a little surprised. I would, because Ben Johnson last year could have had almost his pick of any team he wanted. Any team with an opening, he could have gotten it, except for maybe Los Angeles. But if Los Angeles doesn't land Harbaugh, you better believe Ben Johnson would have been a choice. He could have had the Washington gig. And now look at how good of a job that is. Right? Look at how good of a gig Washington is with Jaden Daniels. So Ben Johnson could have had his choice of any job in the National Football League that was open at the time. And he decided to stay with Detroit. Right? He's like, not the right time. Grass isn't always greener. I got a really good thing going on. If I could see this thing through and we can win a Super Bowl, man, you think I could write my ticket beforehand? Wait till I deliver a championship to Detroit. And he was celebrated for it. I praised him for it. I said, good for you. Good for you, Ben Johnson. Don't take these garbage jobs just for the sake of being a head coach. Appreciate what you have. Deion Sanders. Just need to throw that in. Appreciate the spot that you're in. Don't always need to push for the next thing if the next thing isn't right for you. And now a year later, Ben Johnson is ready to leave a great situation in Detroit, where regardless of what they end up doing this year, they're going to be a Super Bowl contender next year. And you're going to take a job with an organization that has been a pillar of dysfunction, that does not have a quarterback on their roster, and is sitting at the bottom of a division with 3 playoff teams ahead of them. The Raiders gig is what Ben Johnson is going to go for. He's going to leave Detroit. He could have gone to Washington, which would be a very similar situation, right? Washington didn't have a quarterback at the time. Washington was dysfunctional. Now they did make the change in owners, but they had a history of dysfunction. They were in a division with not 3 great teams. All the more reason why the Raiders' job would be more of a head scratcher for Ben Johnson. There are only 2 good teams in the NFC East, the Eagles and the Cowboys. So if Ben Johnson could have had the gig in Washington in a division that's not as deep, only 2 good teams in it instead of the 3 that are in the AFC West. Yes, a history of dysfunction, but a new ownership group that was getting rave reviews early on, and a higher draft pick to take the quarterback of your choice than the Raiders do. Essentially, what Ben Johnson would be doing is taking a worse version of the Commander's job. That's what he stayed in Detroit to get. That would be for everybody not rooting for the Raiders, that would be a wholly unsatisfying end to this story. Ben Johnson stayed where he was. He was comfortable. He was having success. The grass isn't always greener. Didn't let his own drive, his own ego get in the way. He wanted to help Detroit win a championship. All these good things that are said about Ben Johnson and what they can show us in our own lives about being happy where our feet are. And then a year later, Ben Johnson's going to take a worse job than he could have had the last cycle. What is that to say about the decision Ben Johnson made to stick with the Detroit Lions? Man, I knew Tom Brady was dreamy before. Man, if you look at him face to face, and I have before, I've looked Tom Brady right in his eyes. I don't know that he could convince me to take the Raider job. Maybe I wasn't looking hard enough into his eyes. Or perhaps Tom Brady now is even more persuasive than he was when he was playing. That's the only thing I could think of, because it is a worse version of a job Ben Johnson could have had this time a year ago. 719-24-7, 1313, more Drive Time Sports after this. Drive Time Sports here on Extra Sports 1300. Last night, kind of a weird situation. The Denver Nuggets coming off of a big win against the Mavericks that I want to talk about here in just a moment. All of a sudden lose Nikola Jokic. He's not going to play. Which, funny enough, turned out I was considering placing a wager given the Nuggets' good fortune this year in the second night of a back-to-back, which is to say they had yet to lose in that kind of a situation. But I didn't because, like always, I was running late. So I did not place that. And lo and behold, Nikola Jokic scratched late from last night's game against the Houston Rockets because of an elbow injury. And the Denver Nuggets get a whopping 0 points from his replacement, DeAndre Jordan, and lose to the Houston Rockets. So not exactly the way the Nuggets would have liked to follow up a game like they had against Dallas. But not having Nikola Jokic, I've talked about this before. They are better than you think they would be without Nikola Jokic, but they still lose more than they win. And going up against a good Rockets team, you could have reasonably expected last night that they were not going to win that basketball game without Jokic. There's been an update. Vinny Benedetto of the Gazette, friend of the program, need to get him on here soon. Is reports that, and this might be straight from the Nuggets injury report. Either way, he is questionable for tomorrow night's game with his injury that, according to Michael Malone, just popped up. Just popped up. I don't like the sound of that. I don't like that an injury that causes you to miss a game just popped up. Will it pop back up? Are you expecting it to pop up from time to time? Or is it some kind of freak accident that happened? Michael Malone was pretty much mum on the whole subject. Wouldn't give many details other than to say it just popped up. Okay, well, this is the 3-time MVP we're talking about here. Can you give us a little bit more detail? Are you worried about it? Is it serious? Should we be worried about it? Like, you want to go any further than that, Michael? No? Okay, just popped up. So we'll see if he plays on Saturday. I don't think he's in any danger here of not reaching the 65-game threshold, but I was just looking at this during the break. So Nikola Jokic has missed 6 games. We're not to the All-Star break yet. We're 40 games in. So he's pacing in the right direction. Right? If he misses, let's say, even game number 7 at the exact midway point of the Nuggets season, if he kept that pace, he would still have played in enough games to win the MVP. So we're not at the point yet where we need to worry about such things, but it's something worth monitoring considering Nikola Jokic has missed for an entire season in his career 2 games, 9 games, 7 games, 2 games, 9 games, 9 games, 8 games. I suppose the 2022-2023 season where he missed 13 games is comparable, and that was only a couple of years ago. And then last year, 3 games. So my point is, it's to be approaching the midway point of the season, to hit the midway point of the Nuggets season tomorrow night, to have Nikola Jokic miss potentially 7 games, it's rare. It's not something that we're used to certainly seeing. Now, he's not the guy in Philadelphia. Okay, so let's keep it in its proper context. But it is not like Nikola Jokic to miss even 7 games the first 41 of the season. So hopefully this injury that just popped up doesn't pop up again. But with Nikola Jokic on the floor a couple of nights ago against the Dallas Mavericks, you saw bubble Jamal, playoff Jamal, call him whatever Jamal you want. You saw him. You saw him in all his resplendent glory the other night against Dallas. 32 points in the second half, drops 45 on Dallas. That's him. That's even more than him. Right? Nobody says Jamal Murray has to drop 45 points or 32 in the first half for the Denver Nuggets to win a championship, but there he was. If you're a Nuggets fan, your favorite version of Jamal Murray, call him what you will. He's still in there. And just when, and there's been a slow trickle, like almost a slow groundswell. Every day that goes by, I think collectively people are more and more amenable to the idea that the Nuggets can do what they do with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic with Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic. The other night against Dallas, the first of 2 games against Dallas, did you notice that the Nuggets were closing out that basketball game with their patented 2-man game, but playing the role of Jamal Murray on that evening was Russell Westbrook. With Jamal Murray available. Maybe I'm connecting dots that I shouldn't be, but I watched the Denver Nuggets against Dallas night 1 run a lot of 2-man game between Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic, and then the next game after that, Jamal Murray puts up 45. Sure, it's just a coincidence? You sure there's nothing into that? You sure about that? I think there might be a slight correlation. Everyone's gone a little too chummy with Russell Westbrook. And it was the perfect time for Jamal Murray. And yeah, I know Kyrie was just coming off of injury. They didn't have Luka. But it looked like Jamal. It looked like the Murray that the Nuggets won a title with. I don't think the timing of that game was completely coincidental. He'll never let on. Jamal Murray half pays attention to what you're asking him. Like, he's never going to let on that he's motivated by it. And certainly it's not a great look for you to come out and say, yeah, I was upset that they went 2-man game with Russ and Jokic and not me and Jokic, and I'm getting a little bit tired of the fan base liking Russell Westbrook more than me. But I'm not saying that those emotions might not exist somewhere deep in the recesses of Jamal Murray's mind. And I don't have to tell you the importance of getting that Jamal Murray. Right? Nikola Jokic sets, in many ways, the baseline for this Nuggets team. They're never going to bottom out. They're always going to be a playoff team. They could win a playoff series with just Nikola Jokic. But Jamal Murray represents that next level. If Nikola Jokic gets them in a 100-yard dash, if Nikola Jokic can get the Denver Nuggets 70 yards down the field or 80 yards down the field, that Jamal Murray can get them the rest of the way. It hadn't seen enough of that Jamal Murray. And last night, still pretty good game, 22 points. Give credit to Christian Brown stepping up. He had 22. But still need to have Nikola Jokic. He does most of the work. 719-24-7. 13-13, more Drive Time Sports after this. Get back to the stories of the day at the top of the hour with what's driving the show. But I do, for a moment, want to follow this path and entertain the improbable situation in which Deion Sanders gets offered the Dallas Cowboys job and takes it and leaves Colorado. I don't know that CU would be okay. Perhaps there would be some initial rally behind this program where the donors say, we're not going away and we're still going to. But you think about how many players would enter the transfer portal because Deion left. Think about the number of donors that would ultimately leave. I don't know if 2 years is long enough for the Colorado Buffaloes to set themselves up for the rest of their days. My guess would be no. My guess would be they were at least hoping that Deion Sanders would stick around for like a 3 to 5 year plan. But here's always, financial part of it aside, what has always been true and will remain true into the future is once Deion Sanders packs up and goes, that's it. The circus, I don't mean that in a disparaging way, it's just a common analogy that people, or a metaphor that people make, because the circus comes to town and then it leaves. If Deion Sanders leaves to the Dallas Cowboys, to the Las Vegas Raiders, to the Miami Hurricanes, or the Georgia Bulldogs, the idea, like I saw just a headline somewhere, somebody suggesting Chip Kelly to replace Deion Sanders. I am telling you that the confluence of events that led to Deion Sanders agreeing to become the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes will not come together again. Chip Kelly left head coaching at UCLA, which has been a better program than CU has been, to become a coordinator because he didn't want to deal with NIL. And the thing that's going to lure him back, that's going to pull Chip Kelly back to take over as a head coach, is that Deion Sanders leaves CU and all of these star players, all of these 4 or 5 star recruits that only went to Boulder because Deion Sanders was there are gone. You're going to get Chip Kelly. We could say all the nice things about the community of Boulder, the institution up there, and it's all true. It is a phenomenal city with phenomenal people. It is a great institution. I am telling you, their football program would go back to the way it was immediately. Immediately. There won't even be the one COVID year of Carl Durrell where he kind of kept the ship afloat when Mel Tucker left. There won't even be that. As quickly as all the attention and the money and the success came into Boulder with Deion Sanders, it will all go away. We could say that Boulder enhances Deion Sanders, and I think that that's fair to say. I think it accentuates him. They empower him there. I think that he can easily sell Boulder. But they're coming to Boulder for him. And anything outside of that, you are just thinking with the diploma from CU Boulder that is on your wall, because your college is not so special that Deion Sanders can leave and all of these recruits that joined up because of Deion Sanders are just going to stick around because Boulder's awesome. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. I mean, look at Alabama. Okay, guys want to go to Tuscaloosa, Alabama. If you asked me what is one other thing other than the University of Alabama that is in Tuscaloosa, I would not be able to answer. I don't even know for sure that they have a gas station in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I know nothing about it. And if I know nothing about it, then some 17 or 18-year-old kid knows less. But yet, all of these, the Jerry Judys and the Jalen Hurtses and all these players kept flocking to Tuscaloosa. Why? Boulder, I've never been to Tuscaloosa. I can tell you that Boulder would destroy it by a million. There's no way that Tuscaloosa, Alabama has anything that Boulder doesn't and anything better than Boulder. Boulder is an infinitely better city than Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I've never been to Tuscaloosa, but I speak as if it is the truth because I believe it in my soul. It was Saban. It was Saban. That's why they went there. And why do you think there's some cracks in the foundation under Kalen DeBoer, right? Because it was Saban. It wasn't Alabama. And, Alabama fans would be upset about me saying that, but it's true. Because what were you before Nick Saban got there? Nothing. You're irrelevant. But don't worry, because pretty much every other college football program is the same way, including Colorado. It is legitimately Deion Sanders. And if he were to decide against my very sound advice that I will share again with you after the top of the hour, if he were to leave Boulder, he would take everything with him. And CU would be back on the back page, would be irrelevant, would be winning 3-4 games a year, maybe. And there is nothing about what Deion Sanders is doing to say that CU will suddenly become some factory. Because guess what? Again, going back to Alabama, Kalen DeBoer took over the year after Nick Saban, and already Alabama football is worse. They're already worse. What do you think's going to happen when Deion Sanders leaves? It will all go with him. That's just the reality. I'm not trying to disparage anybody. But Deion Sanders is that program. He may be Google or Facebook or X or whatever company you want to think of. They could be in this really nice office building or on this really nice campus, and you could think that that's a draw. They could pick up and they could go work out of a van down by the river, and people would still want to work for some of these companies. Deion is far more important to the CU program than anything CU is to Deion Sanders. And that's okay. But that just means that if this is in any way, shape, or form about more money, about more job security, about more money for assistance, about whatever any demand that Deion Sanders may have, I'm sorry, Colorado, you do it. If this is about you, I don't know that it is, but if in any way, shape, or form this is Deion trying to leverage something against CU, then CU needs to cave. This is the deal you made. Don't you love what you have going on? It will all go away if Deion Sanders decides to actually go through with this awful, awful, awful idea of taking the Dallas Cowboys job. It will all go away. Again, I don't think that's what this is about. But I also wouldn't be shocked if here in the very near future we hear something about a new contract for Deion Sanders. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think it's what it's about. Wouldn't be shocked. 719-247-1313. I'll tell you why Deion Sanders going to the Dallas Cowboys would be a terrible idea and why it would be just as terrible of an idea for the Dallas Cowboys to hire him coming up at the top of the hour. But first, really should keep these closer to me. Let me guess. You have chronic joint pain. If you do, maybe when it starts acting up or when somebody notices that you're in pain, you just go, oh, it's normal. It's so not. It's not normal. The pain from your joints, that is chronic, day after day. It's not normal. And QC Kinetics gives you the opportunity to say, no, you're not going to live with it anymore. They are the nation's leader in regenerative medicine, which, to put it another way, is joint preservation. They treat the root cause of your chronic joint pain, not just the pain itself, like with pain pills. They don't give you a temporary fix like surgery. This is real, meaningful improvement in your quality of life. Isn't that worth at least sitting down with them? I would think so. And the consultation is free. So if you need another reason, deal with joint pain now so you can make the most of the new year. Call QC Kinetics 719-347-1988. That's 719-347-1988. The three stories that are driving the show next. Drive Time Sports on a Thursday. Hello there. Welcome in. Ryan Kaufman with you. Appreciate you tuning in, whether it's on your radio, online, or through the free Extra Sports 1300 app, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. Coming up tonight, Avs taking on the Edmonton Oilers. McKinnon versus McDavid. The last two Hart Trophy winners go head-to-head. We'll talk a little bit about that. One significant lineup change for the Avalanche coming up this evening. In quite the coincidence that it is against the Edmonton Oilers. I'll explain further in just a little bit. In the meantime, 719-247-1313 is the number if you would like to react to any one of these three stories that are driving the show. All righty, we'll start with story number one. The comment heard around, maybe not the world, but definitely the AFC West.
There's a lot of confidence in this team. If we could get past that game, the next game we had to play, we felt real good about.
Sean Payton, of course, could not be referring to any other potential second-round matchup in the NFL playoffs than the Kansas City Chiefs. And with that, Sean Payton has now set the expectation level for this upcoming season. Because surely, if he felt confident that the Denver Broncos would, in the playoffs, go into Arrowhead and beat the Chiefs to keep them from three-peating, surely next year, when none of that is the case, the Denver Broncos should beat the Kansas City Chiefs and should win. And if you beat the Kansas City Chiefs, if you sweep the Kansas City Chiefs, then you should win the AFC West. So I don't see any other logical conclusion to come to than Sean Payton is saying that the Denver Broncos will win the AFC West next year, or at least says that should be the level of expectation. I don't see any other way to interpret that. Because I could sit here and say that Sean Payton is being blinded by his own hubris. I could say that who cares what you thought you would be able to do against the Chiefs? You weren't nearly good enough to beat the Buffalo Bills, and we all knew it going into the game. I could say all that. It doesn't matter. Sean Payton believes it. That's what matters. So if Sean Payton believes it, then you know what? There you go. I was going to wait till the draft happened, free agency. No, before any of that happens, Sean Payton is telling you the Denver Broncos will win the AFC West. And that will be the expectation that they are held to next year. While this year was a massive success, given the low expectations, those are now gone. And that was always going to happen when you won 10 games and you made the playoffs. But they weren't going to be this high. I wasn't going to pick them to win the AFC West, and I wasn't going to say that the only way they would have a successful season next year is if they win the AFC West. But Sean Payton's like, that's the next step for us. In fact, we feel like we would have beaten the Chiefs had we matched up with them. As objectively insane as that is for him to say, it's furthering this culture that Sean Payton has built in Denver that they expect success. And I got to hand it to the guy because he puts himself on the line multiple times a year with things that he says and he does. And to his credit, he mostly backs it up. I think this may be a bridge a bit too far. But file it away Sean Payton said Broncos AFC West champions. That's where you arrive at. If you say that you were going to beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead to stop them from three-peating, then clearly you could see how we ended up at the place that you're going to win the AFC West last year. Because you're saying Kansas City's no longer the best team in the division. We are. All right. Prove it next year. Broncos AFC West champs. Go ahead and get the tattoo. I'd love to see someone get the tattoo to really show, you know what? I believe in Sean Payton. I think this may be one check that his team cannot cash. He's cashed all the others. Maybe not this one. Speaking of cashing checks, here's story number 2.
But is there a chance that you could head to the NFL?
I know where you're going. You
Bob.
try to go viral, right? Yeah. If I respond, you know we're going viral, right?
I know, right?
You know what? The only way I would consider is to coach my son. Not son. No. Sons. Okay.
What that, of course, Deion Sanders on Good Morning America a week ago. That was a week ago. He is saying the only way he would consider leaving Colorado to go to the NFL is if not only he could coach Shador, that he would have to coach both of his sons. And a week later, not even a week later, it's like a half a week later. It's like 5 days, 4 or 5 days. In that time, not only does Deion Sanders not need to coach his sons, plural, he didn't need to coach either of them. He just may take the Dallas Cowboys job anyway. What an amazing turn of events. And all it took was a phone call from Jerry Jones. Ed Werder stating today, reporting today, that if Jerry Jones were to offer Deion Sanders the head coaching job of the Dallas Cowboys, Deion Sanders would take it. And now this thing has gone from a mere conversation to Jerry Jones can have Deion Sanders if he wants it. That is, we are traveling at warp speed from the only way I would consider coaching in the NFL is if I got to coach both of my sons, to not only will I consider it, I will take a job where there's almost no chance for me to coach my kids. You see why I am a little bit hesitant to believe that ultimately Deion Sanders ends up in Dallas? It all seems very fast. And Deion Sanders does not seem to me like a man who would just on a dime change his mind. Did we not think it was at least somewhat possible that he could be offered the Dallas job? I mean, First Take has been talking about this for 3 months. We all, had it somewhere between 0 and 100%. But it was just a week ago that Deion Sanders is like, I need both of my sons on my team or I'm not going to Dallas. I'll take it. I don't think he is this prone to changing his mind. I don't think this is real. I think that this is two people who, if it's not the most important thing in their life, it's very high on the list. Being talked about, being relevant, turning on the television and seeing their face. coming together, joining forces, and saying, let's rule the sports conversation for a week. That's what I think this is. I'm not saying they didn't talk, but it's like when I see these reports that's, the Golden State Warriors are talking to the Lakers about trading for LeBron James. Again, I go back to what else do either one of them have to do on a daily basis that they can't pick up the phone and craft up some fantastical trade ideas? You and I do that on a daily basis with each other and with our friends and coworkers. You don't think somebody whose job it is to make trades would once in a while call up a colleague and say, hey, what would it take for us to land John Morant? You don't think Jerry Jones and Deion Sanders, two people that have affinity towards one another, given what has happened with that Cowboys job, didn't talk to each other and throw around the idea of maybe becoming the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Of course, what else is Jerry Jones going to do? He just fired his head coach. Those are the calls he should be making. Now, I would argue Deion Sanders should not be one of the first calls that you make, but I figured at some point they'd talk about it. And part of the reason why I don't think this is real, I don't think it's going to end up with Deion Sanders in Dallas, is because it is so objectively an awful idea for both parties. It is a bad idea for Deion Sanders to leave Colorado. You are closer to winning a national title at CU than you are winning a Super Bowl in Dallas. So if this is about winning, Colorado gives you a better shot. You're not going to coach your kids at either place. So no advantage to Dallas there. And while Jerry Jones might respect you, you're never going to have control of that organization like you have control over Colorado. And also, I just saw a clip 2 days ago of you. It's not one from yesterday, but it's somewhat recent. You saying that you would be arrested for fighting one of your players if you ever became an NFL head coach. That you can't bear the thought of coaching someone who doesn't live and breathe football the way that you do, because there are plenty of players in the NFL. This is just their job. Everything about this job is wrong for Deion Sanders. But to be fair, this hiring Deion Sanders would be disastrous for the Dallas Cowboys. It would be a step backwards. How many times does a list have to be compiled of these college head coaches that have ultimate power, that are coaching young men who are more willing to listen, who don't have the egos that NFL players do? And they go to the NFL and they try to control everything. They try to rule with an iron fist or try to have complete control. And these other grown men stand up to them and don't listen to them or argue with them. It doesn't work. And I know that Deion Sanders is doing a lot of good in college football. I know he's changing a lot of these things. He's not changing anything about the NFL. The NFL is what it is, and coaches like Deion Sanders that come from the college game are wholly unequipped to have success there. Deion Sanders is not special in that regard. He is not unique in that regard. He would fail like Urban Meyer. He would fail like Pete Carroll. He would fail like so many of these college coaches coming out to the NFL for the first time. It won't work. Maybe a second go around like Pete Carroll in the NFL would be better. But it does not work. And there is a ton of evidence that it doesn't work and very little evidence that it does. This would be a bad idea for Dallas. It would be a worse idea for Deion Sanders. And it's part of the reason why I think that this thing, no way. I'll be stubborn about it. I just don't think he's leaving. And if he ever leaves, it will be for another college job. He is so wrong for the NFL, and the NFL is wrong for him. Story number 3. Nikola Jokic questionable for tomorrow night's game for the Denver Nuggets with the elbow injury that he sustained last night in warm-ups, or it popped up, to use Michael Malone's words. It popped up last night in warm-ups, and he was scratched from the game, a game in which the Denver Nuggets were no match for the Houston Rockets. 128-108 was the final score. We're not used to seeing Nikola Jokic miss this many games this early in the season. It's not panic time yet. He's still well on pace to qualify to receive the MVP. But if he misses tomorrow night, that's 7 games in the first half of the season. There have been multiple seasons in which he hasn't missed 7 games the entirety of the year. So don't love it. But yeah, Nuggets without Jokic against a quality team like the Houston Rockets. Not going to go well, and it didn't. They lost by 20, 128-108. 719-247-1313. Your thoughts on Sean Payton's comment and Deion Sanders' interest in the Dallas Cowboys job. Next. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Ryan Kaufman joined in studio now by Jeff Haber, quickly becoming a friend of the program. Our recurring segment, Magic Money Lines, is back. Jeff,
Thanks.
How did you enjoy Wildcard Weekend?
It was great. I mean, we were right last weekend when we talked about the two upset possibilities.
You
said
like
Commanders.
Washington, I liked the Rams.
Rams was a blowout. Did not see that big of a blowout coming. And the Commanders game was very exciting. So
it was. I don't have a stat like I did last time where there was on average 1.5 upsets per wild card round. I'll just ask you outright. We'll start with underdogs and kind of work our way around. If there is an underdog that you would most like to back this weekend in the divisional round, who would it be?
It's hard to call them an underdog, but on ESPN Bet, the Bills, technically the underdog. We know they lost to the Ravens earlier this season, but they are at home. Who knows what the weather's going to be like in Buffalo too. I wouldn't call them an underdog, but they technically aren't. I think that's probably your safest underdog bet. In terms of the other games, I mean, I don't see the Rams, Commanders, or Texans winning. And if you look at the money line, it's such a huge difference, and there's a reason for that.
Right. I'll hang with the Rams.
Okay, hot streak.
I think that the Rams, and I said this going into the playoffs, the Rams, with what they have unlocked in the last few weeks with the running game of Kyron Williams, with Matthew Stafford, who even with a Super Bowl title to his credit is still somehow underrated as a quarterback. He has Puka Nacua and he has
the offense looks fantastic.
Cooper Kupp. You're right. But also this Rams defense is really good. And there are two reasons why, and they play into one another, I think, why the Rams defense hasn't gotten perhaps the shine that they deserve. And they've certainly got a little bit more about it. But even it seemed like the other day was more about, Sam Darnold's who we thought he was, than the Rams and what they did defensively. And I guess the truth is somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is the Rams lose Aaron Donald. Right? They lose Aaron Donald, who is one of his, probably the best defensive player of his generation. And they replace him with two rookies from Florida State, and Brandon Fiske and Jared Verse. And I think for a lot of people, and I understand why, it's hard for them to say, the Rams defense is going to replace Aaron Donald with those guys and be okay. But it turns out that they are. So I like the Rams a lot. Philly's offense worries me.
I think Philly's very methodical, and that's something that we saw last week. They're very methodical with their offense. It's not just give Barkley the ball and go. They try to open up the passing game first and get Barkley going in that second half. To me, I think the Eagles are just a little bit more, like I said, methodical with their approach and their game plan. They're going to figure things out, and they're going to figure out – they've figured out every defense so far this year. I don't see them stopping now with this Rams defense. Even though the Rams defense has been playing really well, I could easily see second half adjustments, Eagles then take over. And that's kind of been the Eagles, how they've gone all season long.
Yeah, I'll say this for Philadelphia. One, their defense is outstanding.
Yeah.
So, Philly's defense is going to have something to say, and I don't want to discount them at all. If Philly, I think it's as simple as this. If Jalen Hurts has to win the game, the Eagles will lose. But if Saquon Barkley has to win them the game, I think that they can win. I'm giving credit to the Rams to say that they can limit Saquon enough to make Jalen Hurts beat them, and I don't think he's capable of it.
I think you're going to get a game from Barkley like you've gotten every game. He'll get his 80-plus yards. Like even on a bad game, he'll still get 70, 80 yards. He's still somebody you have to always be focused on. and that always opens up the passing game. And they have so many great wide receivers where I think the Eagles just have too many weapons, and that's part of their issue when you're trying to defend them is who are you going to focus on? Because you focus too much on Barkley, it opens up the pass game. You focus too much on Brown, it's going to open up the other wide receivers. It's going to open up Barkley in the flat. It's going to open up the run game. There's just too many weapons on this Eagles team, and I just don't see the Rams beating it. I mean, that's just me though.
We can agree to disagree. That's
Yes.
part of what makes Magic Money Lines presented by ESPN Bet, the segment that's sweeping the nation that it is. So I will go with and to your other one, I do think Baltimore is going to win. And in Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City, that triumvirate in the AFC of these elite teams that have been elite all season long. Yeah. It's funny. Buffalo, I think, has a lot of what could give Kansas City problems. Baltimore gives Buffalo a lot of problems. Kansas City owns Baltimore.
Yep.
So it's like, it's
about the matchup. Always.
The comment, and I don't know if you saw the comment from Sean Payton where he said that they had a lot of confidence that if they were to beat Buffalo, that they would have beaten Kansas City.
Right.
I don't believe that, but I think there's something to be said for Buffalo in that regard, that if Buffalo can beat Baltimore, I think they would be very confident going into Arrowhead with all of their history.
Yeah.
I just don't know if they're going to get past Baltimore because it's not a good matchup.
I agree on that. And to Sean Payton's credit, the Broncos almost did beat the Chiefs this year. So that's
regular season.
Season. Yeah, true. But I mean, a blocked field goal, something weird, right? Like you could see it. One thing that I'm just going to throw out there is I don't count out the Commanders. I mean, I just think Jaden Daniels has proven he can make winning plays in close games. I think if that game is close in the fourth quarter, it might just come down to who has the ball last. And the Commanders, granted, I think the Eagles, Jalen Hurts was out when the Commanders played the Eagles, and the Commanders ended up winning that game, right?
That was Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, but still close game towards the end. Jaden Daniels, seems to just keep having this magical rookie season. Again, might come down to just whoever has the ball last.
And I agree with you there. And I'll go and look, Detroit without Aiden Hutchinson, at some point it's going to hurt them. Right? And I'm not saying it has to hurt them to where they get bounced from the playoffs, but there will be a game here at some point during this postseason where not having Aiden Hutchinson affects the Detroit Lions. And it could be in a game where you say, even though Jaden Daniels is coming off of a playoff win, he's still a rookie. This is still uncharted territory for him. You want to rattle a young quarterback like that. Detroit doesn't necessarily have the players to be able to do that. So there's a good chance, to your point, that Jaden Daniels is going to be, I don't want to say comfortable, but he's going to be able to move the ball. And jumping off of that, I think that's why, even though you and I both really only love one underdog this week.
Yeah.
If we're looking at the spread.
Again, I'm saying it's got to be close in the fourth quarter. I don't think the Commanders defense is going to make it a close game in the fourth quarter. I would be very surprised. I think the Lions are just too much of a powerhouse offensively, and the Commanders aren't one of the best defensive teams to keep it a close game in the fourth quarter. But if it is, that's going to be a fun ending to a game.
Okay, so let's go there, because my next point was going to be, I only really feel strongly about one of the underdogs this weekend outright winning, and that's LA.
Interesting.
But I'm looking at these lines, and you could say what they are on ESPN Bet. They're all quite significant, save for Baltimore and Buffalo.
Correct. It's plus 400 for the Commanders.
Well, I mean the spread, but point spread.
Yeah.
The point spread. Kansas City, whose entire identity this year has been, we're going to win pretty much every game, but it's only going to be by a score, is 8.5 point favorites.
Yep.
I don't
know if they're winning by more than 8. Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Are they going to win by 10 points? Right.
I think there's a possibility, because I do think that the Kansas City Chiefs have grown, and there's only a few teams in any specific sport that can really get away with this. But I do think that Kansas City gets bored, right? And Kansas City doesn't put the pedal to the metal throughout the regular season. And the Golden State Warriors were this way. The Patriots were this way, except for the year where they had Randy Moss and they were eviscerating everybody. You have to achieve that level of benefit of the doubt. Like, there's a chance. And that's why this game against Houston is so fascinating, because is it that, or is it that this team is more vulnerable than they've ever been? And I need a playoff game to see it. And know for sure.
And because all the Chiefs games are so close, and a lot of them come down to the final possession. It could go one way or another, just like the Broncos game, blocked field goal, right? No one saw that coming. Because so many of their games are kind of like that. Are they a real 1 seed? That was one of the storylines going into this playoffs, was, are they really a 1 seed? I mean, they're a playoff team, but are they good enough where they're just going to mow everyone down like they have in the regular season? Or are those vulnerabilities going to come out in the playoffs, and it's just going to take one, game against maybe the Bills or Ravens to just knock them out?
And we'll see, but it may actually be, and I think Buffalo would have confidence going against the Kansas City Chiefs, having beaten them and just being kind of a different version of the Bills than they had been in years past with James Cook's ability to run the ball. But it could be a team like Houston that is maybe best equipped to put the fear into Kansas City, because even though they're a playoff team from last year, they're not supposed to be here. Right. They won a bad division. They get the Chargers, and Herbert wets the bed, and they're only here because of that. Like Houston with Buffalo and Baltimore, I do think there's some scar tissue there that might worry them in a close game. With Houston, they don't have that. Wow. So maybe Houston, what you said for Philadelphia, or I'm sorry, what you said for Washington, I'll apply to Houston.
Okay.
I'll say the longer the game goes, if it is close, the more confidence Houston is going to have going up against Kansas City for sure.
But then again, Kansas City always seems to win these close games all season long. So it's,
but to your point about, are they really, what do we always say? Good teams win, great teams cover.
Yeah.
I'm looking at these spreads, and I kind of like Houston plus the points. I like Washington plus the points. I sure as heck like LA plus the points. And Buffalo, Baltimore is basically a toss-up. To me, you just pick who you think's going to win the game. And maybe I'm going about this the right way, but to me, if I'm willing to take Buffalo plus 1.5, like, do I really think they're going to win the game by, they're going to lose the game by 2? Like, they're just going to win. So it's like you have 3. I'm not entirely sure that I wouldn't take all the more prohibitive underdogs this weekend with the spread. I don't think they'll all win.
Because even the Commanders right now, 9.5. So, I mean, either the lines are going to blow them out, and if it's a close game in the fourth quarter, you feel pretty good about getting the spread.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If it's close late, then I don't see it getting out of reach. So I kind of like the dogs on the spread. There's only one dog on the money line that I would seriously consider this weekend, and that would be LA. And yours would be the Buffalo Bills.
I put underdog in air quotes for that one.
Right. Well, what I said, we were talking about, upsets or whatever last week, and it was the same thing with the Chargers. Right. Like the Chargers are on the road. They're lower seed. It would be kind of but most people wouldn't consider it an upset because they're favored. With Buffalo, it's the other way.
Right.
They're not favored, but they're also at home, and they're also a really good team. And who would you go with, Lamar or Josh Allen for MVP? Or are you a Ralph Nader guy and going with Saquon?
Actually, Saquon. I would go with Saquon, but gosh, I think I would go with Lamar. He does have better stats, right?
For sure.
and
He does have better
right,
numbers
but then
than
Josh Allen's the
Allen.
higher seed. I just don't think the seeding here matters. I think it comes down to, when they played in the regular season, who won and who's got the better stats.
Lamar.
And Lamar's
answer to both of them.
But I also think we haven't had a running back like Saquon in a very long time. We haven't had a running back have the kind of year he's had, and the Eagles are not where they are without him.
100%. You know who could use Saquon Barkley? The New York Giants.
Please don't bring that up.
Yeah, sorry about that. Are you worried at all about Cat with the injury?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm kind of happy he's getting some days off. What is he, top 10 in minutes along with the rest of the starting lineup?
You want to talk about MVP candidates, like in a world without, so Luka's going to be disqualified because he's not going to reach the threshold, and
Right.
Embiid long gone, forget about that.
Yeah.
In a world without if you go take out SGA and Jokic, you can make an argument that Karl Anthony Towns is the next guy up of the players that are trending to be eligible.
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns, and you and I talked when he got traded, and we were of like mind, like, yeah, you were losing some defense with Julius Randle, but I think we were both very high on the acquisition of
and that
Karl Anthony Towns.
This offense and him playing the center spread out, a real true spread out five would help him unlock something, and it has. So,
it absolutely has. One of my favorite stats last night, I was at Gordon Ramsay's burger joint in Vegas, and I'm watching Sports Center, and they put up a stat that now Josh Hart has the most games of, I think it's 15 rebounds and 10 assists in Knicks history.
Yeah.
After last night?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's
insane.
A crazy, and it's a real, sometimes, especially in the world I live in with Nikola Jokic stuff, like these stats get a little goofy, and you're like, okay, what does this mean?
In today's NBA with Jokic and Shea and all these guys, Luka constantly getting triple doubles, and then you have a guy like Josh Hart does it, and it's like, he's what, 6'4"?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason for him to be getting triple doubles, but it's funny, when he talks all the time in his press conferences, he's like, it's not my job to score. I got 4 other guys on the team who can do that. I'll just get the rebounds and do everything
refreshing.
else. Yeah.
I mean, he's just such a perfect player for them. And the fact that he playing for an organization that had Patrick Ewing and had Bernard King.
He defines New York basketball.
15 rebounds, 10 assists. There's no Nick that has done that in more games than Josh Hart. That's crazy.
Yep.
By
the way, your MVP, other than Towns, I would say Jason Tatum. If the Celtics, if the Celtics somehow get the 1 seed again, I mean, it's time that he gets some shine.
I think he's gone.
He never will. The Celtics are too rounded. They're too rounded.
We're right. All right, so Jeff, appreciate the time. You can check out all the bets that Jeff and I are making on ESPN Bet. And if you sign up now, new ESPN Bet Sportsbook customers can get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Plus, you unlock 30 days of ESPN Plus, which would be handy if you're a fan of the Colorado Springs Switchbacks. That's where you can watch them. Download the app and sign up with promo code radio to get started today. Must be 21 or older, present in Colorado. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Jeff Haber, appreciate the time, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
We'll close out this edition of Drive Time Sports after this. Welcome back, Drive Time Sports. Appreciate Jeff Haber dropping by. Magic Money Lines. That's fun. We were talking during the break, and he said he doesn't get to talk enough sports in his daily life because he's on a music station. I'm like, I don't get to talk face to face with people. Mine. I get to talk sports all the time, but so it's good. Glad to have him on. And that will be a segment that we're doing. Even when the football season is over, we'll continue to do it. He's a big basketball guy, as am I. So we'll keep that going. In the meantime, a few texts here on Dion. Ed Werder reporting today that if Jerry Jones were to offer Deion Sanders the head coaching job of the Dallas Cowboys, Deion Sanders would accept. Is this real? Do you think it's a good idea? We go to the text line for such thoughts. From Alan, this is all a ploy by Deion to get more money from CU. I would be surprised if it was. If that's what this is all about, I would be surprised. I did say earlier in the show, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a contract extension, but to go through these, flirtations with the Dallas Cowboys just for a new contract, I don't think that's what this is about. He may get one, but, Colorado has done a lot. And I get it. They got to keep doing stuff. I would be surprised if that's what this is about. I think it's about ego. It's about, there's some part of Deion Sanders that I think is actually entertaining it. Or just the thought of, hey, and we all do this in our careers. From time to time, we're like, I wonder what this would be like. Would I like this? And I think Jerry Jones caught him at a time where maybe he's thinking about some small part. I'm sure Deion has thought about it. I'm surprised that it's being reported that he's serious about it because it's such a bad idea. It is such a bad idea for him to leave Boulder to go to Dallas. And what I haven't found yet is I have not found much sentiment. And I have Dallas Cowboys fans that in my family, I have friends that are Cowboys fans. I haven't seen or heard any sentiment of anybody going, this would be great. Now, maybe I should watch First Take more or what's the show on FS1 because they say a lot of these things about Deion Sanders. So maybe one of them but I'm not seeing a lot of sentiment from people that, oh, this is a great idea. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right place. But I would say the people who are fans of the team, their opinion matters more to me than, Keyshawn Johnson's does. I have yet to hear or see a Cowboys fan go, this is awesome. Let's do it. My prediction is Deion Sanders stays at CU, maybe with a new contract, but he stays at CU and Kellen Moore becomes the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. And now, here's the thing, though. With Deion Sanders, reportedly, he's not saying this, Ed Werder is, but with Ed Werder saying this, now if the Cowboys don't hire Deion, then if there are people who are a fan of it would say Deion was willing to go. It would be one thing if Cowboys fans wanted this to happen, but Deion said no, and so the Cowboys went with Kellen Moore. And they could go, well, we wanted Deion, it just didn't work out. Like you hear that sometimes with these dream candidates for head coach for NFL teams. Oh, we couldn't get this guy. We wanted to, he didn't want us, so we went here. I would say Kellen Moore would be a better hire than Deion Sanders, but he's not as splashy. I don't know that he is a good enough hire to make Cowboys fans over the moon excited. He makes a lot of sense given the way that that organization runs itself. But it's interesting to me that it's out there that Deion would say yes. Because if there are Cowboys fans that want Deion Sanders, now Jerry Jones will be disappointing them if he doesn't get him, because you could have gotten Deion Sanders. Why didn't you hire Deion Sanders? He said he wanted the job. More questions than if Deion's like, nope, I'm staying in Boulder. Jerry Jones could say, I tried. Wasn't interested. Brett says Deion Sanders lived in Dallas most of his life. Yeah, I think he still has a residence down there. I'm not doubting his ties to the Dallas, the organization or the city. I'm sure his mind has wandered to that place, but to be this serious about it just 1 week after going on Good Morning America and saying the only way that you would consider taking an NFL job is if you get to coach your sons, and now you're going to a place that certainly Shador's not going to end up. So we'll see. I'm sure tomorrow we'll get something else. I don't think he's taking the Dallas Cowboys job. I don't. Tonight at 7 o'clock, or at least our coverage beginning at 7:30 puck drop. Pretty good matchup if you're into like the best hockey players in the world matching up. Connor McDavid against Nathan McKinnon. Jared Bednar did put out one interesting nugget today at morning skate. Mikko Rantanen is going to play center. The coincidence of this all being, remember when Mikko Rantanen playing center helped the Avalanche go to the Stanley Cup final and sweep Edmonton? The way he played at that position. And you know where I lie on this, and I always say, you know where I lie on this when this subject comes up. I don't like McKinnon and Rantanen being apart. But what's the other thing that I have constantly said the Avs need, especially now that they have figured out goaltending? They have to get Casey Middlestat going. And he just, it hasn't clicked for him. And the Avs need more depth in their production. I don't like splitting up Nathan McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen. I think Mikko Rantanen will play well at the center position. I just like him on the wing with Nathan McKinnon, and I wish that Casey Middlestat would become the player that the Avs expect him to become, and he just hasn't. Maybe this is the shot in the arm he needs. Avs and Oilers coming up at 7:30. With that, I bid you adieu. Appreciate you tuning in. Appreciate the interaction, certainly. Thanks to Jeff Haber for stopping by. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 3 here on Extra Sports 1300.